All right, guys, welcome to the podcast. We are here with the home team, half of the home team. Just me and MDB today. The big guy is
smaller
traveling.
half of the home team.
The small end, that's right.
Definitely the smaller end of the home team, by the way.
The shorter half of the home team. How tall are you, MDB?
Not that these other guys are giants.
No.
Dennis and Jason are not super tall. But
one of the most surprising things about meeting Jason in person was the fact that and I hope he listens to this, he wasn't as big as I thought he would be.
Jason, you little guy.
For sure. Like 100%. I wonder if other people have that experience, because you see Jason out there. And the other thing that's like pretty eye-opening is CrossFit athletes in general are pretty small.
Yeah, 5'6" to 5'8".
And so when your exposure to them has just been kind of on TV and or on the streams, and you meet some of them in person, I'm sure other people have this experience. Like you meet Rich Froning, Josh Bridges, Matt Frazier, like they're all like surprisingly short. So yeah. Jason's like a little taller than all of those guys, but he's not by any means a tall guy. But anyway. Yeah,
the outliers in the equation, like, Brett Fikowski was
back
taller.
In the day, Asia Bardo. I remember Asia Bardo was like the
tall
one
athlete.
tall guy.
Spencer Hendel was a tall athlete.
He was like the
Craig
tallest,
Kenny
if he
was a tall
right?
athlete.
How tall was Spencer? He was a big guy.
7'2".
He was a tall guy. I remember what event was it? It was like a pig flip event that he absolutely just manhandled. That's the thought that comes to my mind.
Those were the fucking golden ages of the CrossFit Games, bro. Those were the golden ages of the CrossFit Games. But funny thing about this kind of height conversation that we're talking about, like I'm 5'8" on a really good day, like 5'8" on a really good day, maybe 5'9" by the DMV standards, like DMV license standards, 5'9". But I've ruptured my Achilles at the end of December, and in the past 4 or 5 weeks, I've been in a boot, and the boot's got like a 2-inch,
5'10" with the
lift.
Achilles recovery.
This is what I'm getting at. A 2-inch lift, plus I have the riser on the other foot to like even out my hips so that like my hips aren't out of line, because it was really wacky. And I'm kind of like looking people in the eye who are almost 6 foot, and there's a whole different feeling, dude, Gabe, there's a whole different feeling. See how excited I just got?
Dude,
there's a whole different feeling to looking somebody in the eye who's almost 6 feet tall. It's like I want to keep the boot going forever now.
So there is a podcast just came out, and I've heard clips of this because he's been on Rogan. So Derek from More Plates, More Dates just had this guy on his podcast who did the limb lengthening surgery.
Oh, the heightening surgery?
Dude, he went from 6 foot tall to 6'6". And the experience of this is apparently, I haven't heard the actual like firsthand experience podcast. I want to, but when he talked to Rogan about it, he said that this surgery is like one of the most painful, brutal recoveries you can go through, because they essentially
break your legs, right?
They break your legs. They put some plates and screws in, and then they have to like slowly like space them out, let the bone heal, space them out, let the bone heal.
That's too much.
Dude, it is insane. But if you look before and after pictures of this guy, dude, like he got 6 inches tall. You also like, it's not like your legs are going to function the same way ever again. Like you're just doing it for
the cosmetics
height.
Yeah.
But like, I don't even think you can like jump the same way again. Like you're not going to be, it's crazy, like crazy. The length, no pun intended, people will go for just cosmetic changes. I mean, you can go down the whole, plastic surgery rabbit hole, but that specifically, or at least how they documented it in the video, seems like a rough way to go.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of been on the medium shorter side my whole life. Like, I was always like the fucking line leader at the beginning of elementary school, dude. Like I was the running back in every football game I ever played. I played second base and center field growing up. I did all this, like the kind of short, medium sized people things. And I'm fine with that, man. It's okay. But it is kind of cool. It's been a cool experience to have the extra 2 or 3 inches with the boot and like look somebody in the eye who I previously was not looking in the eye. There's a different feeling to it. I'm not going to go all the way down the path of getting these like these feet risers and stuff like this that you can put into your shoes. Do you see these commercials for stuff like this on like YouTube or whatever on Instagram?
No.
They never pop up. Dude,
No, I
guess my algorithm.
I don't get hit with the foot riot.
Algorithm. My algorithm's telling me to get these risers, bro. No, but there's these inserts that like you could put into your shoes that make you a couple of inches taller. But like, if you're using that to go and meet women or whatever, or like when you take them off, you go back down to your standard height. You go back down to regular height. Like you're not fooling anybody at some point, right?
Yeah. I mean, but it like all of this goes to ask the question of, especially as we, get more immersed into this digital world, because the extreme example of that, like at least then you're like in person giving yourself 1 or 2 inches, but there's even apps now. We actually talked about it with Jason on a previous episode. There was this app that I saw the ad for that I got hit with the ad of like, you can easily Photoshop yourself to like look more jacked. Yeah, and like the ad was like examples of like, touch your shoulders, get wider, like more like, and people are, I'm assuming, using that for dating profile pictures or just for Instagram, which, if you're single, Instagram's basically a dating website. And, like,
it's pretty close.
Then what happens? Then what happens when you're like, oh, like that's the picture I saw. You meet him in person. You're like, what happened there? It's pretty crazy,
dude,
man.
It's probably been going on with every advent of every new technology or how people are trying to improve their cosmetic appearance. I mean, it's probably been going on for the entirety of human history, right? Like even if you go back to just the beginning of Instagram and being able to filter your pictures. Remember filters that you would be able to put on your pictures and like you would like increase the structure to 9,000 so that you could like have more defined like abs or whatever. It is really interesting like how that whole there's probably whole economies around.
Oh, dude, 100%.
This kind of stuff.
There's always whole economies built off of people's insecurities, and it's a big insecurity for a lot of guys. Like being short is something that obviously a lot of men want to change. Although this example is strange. She's like 6 foot tall, wants to be 6'6". Like 6 foot tall already weird.
Seems 6 foot tall is pretty good, man.
Yeah, that's not an issue at all. At least perspective is everything. From the 5'6" guy over here. Let me ask you a short, medium guy question. Did you ever date a girl taller than you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's just fun. I did too. Two girls that I remember that one was like taller than me enough that it like wasn't even comfortable to hold hands. I remember that. Like I vividly remember that.
Nice. Is this your son?
Dude, she was pretty tall. It's just funny thinking back on it because obviously super happily married now. But it's funny because even that never, I guess, bothered me per se. I feel like I was never like super, super insecure about my height. I just kind of accepted because like being 5'6", you're not even like medium height. You're just like short and you got to lean into it. Like it kind of is what it is.
You're 5'6"?
5'6", man. 5'6" on a good day.
Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I'm like 5'7". We're pretty close. We're not too far off.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
But no, I'm definitely 5'6". Unless I've grown in my 30s, which I don't think is the case. But I remember the one thing I vividly remember is listing my height on the college athletics website as 5'8". I do remember.
Yeah, you got to add a little bit. You got to pad those numbers a little bit. Yeah,
definitely,
right?
100%.
What's funny is like a lot of Hollywood too. A lot of leading men in Hollywood are in that range, like even shorter than
short,
5'6",
small
5'7".
guys. Very short, small guys.
If you watch Top Gun Maverick, so first of all, Top Gun Maverick is a top shelf movie. What a great movie. It's a run through the wall type of rah America nostalgia movie. Like it's perfect. Yeah, dude. Top Gun Maverick is a great movie. They knocked it out of the park. I really like Tom Cruise's stuff in general. I think Tom Cruise does a lot of really cool stuff. I think he's a maniac doing some of the stunts that he does. Like it's pretty incredible how fearless he is with some of that stuff. But if you watch how that movie's shot, it's really interesting because he's definitely wearing risers in that movie. And most of the shots in that movie, at least from like my amateur point of view, are shots where they're looking at him in a way that like you can't tell that he's as short as he is. Like he's seeing eye to eye with his co-stars in a lot of the way that they shot the movie.
Do you know, I looked it up. Do you know how tall he is?
I'm going to say 5'5".
He's 5'7".
5'7".
5'7". Yeah.
That's got to be exaggerated a little bit. They're padding the numbers there a little bit.
Do you remember when 24 was like a really, really popular show?
Yeah. Jack Bauer, man.
Jack Bauer.
Dude, 24 took over for a while.
Keith Sutherland.
Kiefer Sutherland.
Keither Sutherland. But I remember the first search that comes up is Keith Sutherland height. He's 5'9". But I remember 24 was this huge show. Obviously, he's like this, action hero in that show. And the running shop that I worked at through college, I worked at a running store. It was a triathlon store, but mainly did running shoes. It was in Union Square. It was on 14th between 6th and 7th, I believe. And so we had a decent amount of celebrities that would come in every now and then just because it was that area. And I remember Keither Sutherland came in during that time, and I was surprised by how small he was. Like you see some of these people and it's always funny how, especially when they're played as the hero protagonist, like alpha male in a show, they obviously shoot it in a way to make them seem bigger than life in every respect.
Yep.
And then you meet them in person and you're like, whoa, did not see that coming. He was also very, very skinny when I saw him, but I remember that. Yeah.
Fame is a really interesting, is an interesting concept. Like the concept of being a famous human being is very interesting. And there's definitely levels of fame that I think are almost unimaginably tough to deal with.
For sure.
Like I think that there's too famous, like that there's people out there that obviously have been very successful, that are worldwide about, what they've done, what they do, how they do it. But man, can you imagine the level of fame that it must be to be like Taylor Swift or Justin Bieber, or like every single thing that you ever do in your life is scrutinized. Every place that you ever go anywhere, there's cameras following you. There's like, and I understand at some level, they also signed up. They signed up for being a public persona, right? And part of being a public persona is that, like, the media is going to do their thing with you. But that's also an unimaginable level of scrutiny or like oversight at all times. It's got to be pretty crazy.
Yeah, and it's like weird to say, oh, that must be tough, because it's like, oh, woe is me, I'm so successful, I have all this money, but like it must be tough. 100% it must be
even
tough.
Think about the security aspects of it. Think about the security aspects of somebody like that. Every single place that they go, every single thing that they do, every single phone that they access, every single computer, like it all has to be like super heavily monitored. And I'm sure that there's layers on layers on layers of this that I'm not even thinking about in terms of like
100%.
the weird things that people try to do to get close to somebody like that.
Especially for women, right? Like a Taylor Swift. The one thing that I was thinking about as we were talking about like the male heroes, movie stars, their kind of like physiques and stuff. And I saw a really interesting video about this, and it was such a good point that I think is worth bringing up and talking about. And it's this like unrealistic expectation that I feel like this talked a lot about on the female side, but also the unrealistic expectation of like men and the physique that they're trying to get, because a lot of it is painted by these guys who we were talking about, like in person look very different than they do in the movie, but you see them in the movie, right? Like you see Brad Pitt in Fight Club, or you see like Hugh Jackman.
Everybody wanted to look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
Right.
Everybody.
But then in the video that I watched, and I think this was actually Derek from More Plates for Dates, he had this video. He was saying that like, he's like 150 pounds in that movie. Like he's very, very, it's not because a lot of people look at that, and because of the lighting, because of the cinematography, they're like, man, that is a shit ton of muscle. Like, I need to go work out and like build a bunch of muscle. But it's really just like these very, very lean guys, and also very lean to the point where it's not even sustainable for them. Like movie stars look the way that they look in these top roles that they've become like widely recognized from. And that is a snapshot in time where they are similar to a bodybuilder prepping to peak for a show. They are in a state that they don't even look like that year round.
Yeah.
Like they don't walk around that way. They look like that way. Plus there's the ideal lighting. Plus there's, the Hollywood cameras, the angles, and all the things that make them look a certain way. And how detrimental is it that is what, your average Joe is going to the gym comparing themselves to in some way. And now maybe that's amplified too by social media and the fact that everyone's just posting, their best angle with the best lighting, with the best pump, so on and so forth. And then, you constantly see that you're working hard in the gym, you're doing the diet thing, you're clean eating. And then you're like, I still don't look like those pictures. But the thing is, they also don't look like those pictures. And I think that that's always a worthy reminder. And, saying it out loud, like it seems obvious, but I think it's worth bringing up because I fall victim to this. I'm sure you can relate to it too. You see all this and it's like, man, like that's what I'm working hard to attain. But it's kind of like realizing that, is that really even realistic for the person that you're looking at?
Oh yeah, this is a deep subject. It kind of covers a lot of the things that we already kind of touched on a little bit as we got to this point. It's interesting because I think it's possible to look aesthetically good all year round. I do think think it's possible for a normal human being to have an aesthetic look that they're proud of all year round. And that could change for different people, and different people have different levels of what like they think they want to, look like, they want to feel like, they want to perform like. And I think for some people that look might be people who are into fitness and who are thinking about this stuff. I think for some people that might be more muscular, that might be bigger. For other people, it might be more athletic. It might be a little leaner. But I do think like you can organize your training, you can organize your life, you can organize your nutrition to stay in a level of shape all year round that you're really happy with. And I'm not saying that there won't be peaks and valleys with that as you go along, where it's like, okay, cool, I had a rough few months and, actually wasn't able to get to the gym as much. And, I put on a couple of pounds, or, I really dialed in these last couple of months and I feel and look, close to what my optimal best might look like. But it does get hard when you're chasing an unrealistic standard all the time. If you are chasing an unrealistic standard all the time, I think that can lead to, feeling like inadequate about your own self, feel inadequate about your workouts, constantly thinking that you need to be, working harder, constantly thinking that you need to be going to the gym more. And, I think for all the really great things about the fitness industry, it obviously has helped millions and millions of people out there better their lives, take control of their fitness, their nutrition, leads to tremendous gains on the mental health side of things for people who that's important to as well. I also do think that like it can become a bit of like a neuroses for people at times. And it certainly has been for me at times, where it's like you become neurotic thinking like, I didn't get a great workout today and I feel bad that I didn't get the most optimal workout, and, my look or my aesthetic isn't going to be the most optimal because I didn't get the best workout. It's like, it's this weird feeling sometimes that like you're constantly needing to, look better, feel better, be bigger, be more muscular, whatever. Like that to me, I think can be unhealthy in a way. And there was a trend on Instagram recently that I saw pop up where it was like a lot of these guys were showcasing their physiques, saying like, hey, this is my physique. This is my real physique. No specific lighting, no pump.
I saw that.
This is my real physique. Waking hour, going to the gym 4 to 5 times a week for the past 10 years. And a lot of these guys who are posting this, they looked muscular and athletic, but they weren't movie star jacked. You know what I'm saying? Like they look strong, they look athletic, they look healthy, and that's great. And, that's awesome. But they weren't like showcasing this unrealistic standard that we were talking about.
Yeah. And if you add now the Ozempic and those things, like that adds a completely new dimension to this stuff.
Do you think Ozempic is like widely used by people who don't need it? Like, do you think that?
Yes. 100%.
You think people who are like trying to get incremental gains toward being super ripped, do you think they're using GLP-1 and stuff like that?
Yeah. And if not GLP-1s, like all other sorts of like peptides, because GLP-1 is a peptide. I've gone so deep down the peptide rabbit hole. I know so much about peptides. Well, no, just enough to be dangerous, but I knew nothing about it maybe a month and a half ago. I got really interested after having Josh Whalen from Blokes on the podcast and actually having a conversation with him about a couple things. And dude, I think that, yes, I think that there's so many people. And if you've watched any of Hiller's content on it, because he's very open about, he's on TRT and he's done a bunch of peptides and he's done a bunch of videos, and you like go through the comments and stuff, man. And yes, I think that there's a lot of people using stuff that I think is honestly incredibly beneficial for like very specific use cases. But I think that it's almost become, it's too accessible. It's incredibly accessible. There's a lot of companies that can obviously tell that there's money to be made here, and like
it's like vanity medicine or like boutique medicine, right?
100%. Because I've actually, I think, softened my stance, because I've talked to Jason about this on previous episodes of the podcast, but I've softened my stance, my personal opinion, my 2 cents, for whatever that's worth, on Ozempic specifically. And that in the beginning, I was very like, this is terrible. Like, why do we have now like a pharmaceutical that people are using instead of building the very important habits that you have to do to see change? I do think that there is a growing group of people, honestly, because we are so sick, because so many people are overweight, that have honestly like tried everything. Like they have, and they don't have access to the best information. And for some of these people, for a lot of these people, with the correct guidance, having something, just because I know how powerful the motivation and momentum is of seeing success finally, I can see so many people, like, if you finally start just losing weight, that could be the motivation to do the habits. That could be the motivation to clean up your eating, to start working out, to start doing these things. Now, can it be used irresponsibly? And some people are literally just depending on this one thing and not doing any of these things. And now they're also losing muscle, they're losing bone density. And yes, they're losing weight, but they're kind of like, stealing now from, like an account that they're going to have to pay later. I think that that's happening too. But I think that in specific use cases, it is very, very useful for the right person. Having said that, it's almost like too easy of a path to take for the guy that just has the unrealistic expectation of how lean they want to be, is like 80% of the way there, and it's just going to use it to shortcut that last 20% that honestly does take a lot of work. You have to be super disciplined to get that last little bit. Now you can get it by getting this thing. Is that a good use case for it? In my personal opinion, no. And I think that that's happening a lot, and it's just going to be more and more rampant as it becomes more accessible. Like as soon as this thing doesn't have to be an injectable anymore, and there's a lot of companies working on something that will just be an oral version of it.
Yeah.
Dude, I can see that alone being something that's holding a lot of people back that would just try it. But the fact that, you kind of have to inject something, I know is a big deterrent for a lot of people. Once this becomes like a pill you can take, dude, it's going to open the floodgates big time. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
I haven't really thought too deeply about like the middle or end range cases of use for this stuff, where it's like, I don't quote unquote need it, but I'm using it to get myself to a physique that would take much more discipline, much more hard work, like that last 10, 20% that you were talking about. I haven't really thought about that much. It makes a lot of sense that people who are in that category, who want to get to that point, look at this and go, man, I've been trying really hard for many years to get to some place that like I'm not able to, in my mind, not able to get to, or my habits are holding me back or whatever it is. And they're going to try this thing that gets them there. I don't really want to kind of comment on that too much, but the thing that I do want to comment about is like, I do think for a certain subset of people who, like you said, man, like these things can be like a life route, a life vest with a tether, right? Like if you're so in the rapids of, of obesity, of, habits that are weighing you down, like you're not able to find the energy, like you can't make any progress. Like it's been years. You kind of feel yourself slipping even further and further and further. You know, it could be a great life vest with a tether to like pull you to shore a little bit, to like give you, like you said, the motivation to, you know, make some lasting changes to like, man, I'm seeing these results. I'm not having the same cravings. I'm losing weight. Man, I can start to stack on top of this some wins. I can go to the gym. I can walk a little bit more. I'm going to eat a little bit more healthy. I think that that's a fantastic. I don't know a ton about the long-term health risks. I don't know a ton about like, you know, if you're taking Ozempic, please also blah, blah, blah. Like I'm not commenting on that stuff. I'm just saying like in terms of use, I can see that would be a really, like a valid, in my opinion, way to use it, as a tool to help get you to shore, man, because you don't want to continue down that path. And if there's an option for something like that and you've really tried everything else and maybe you just don't have any other options right now. Yeah, maybe that's a way. But, you know, one of my buddies who I grew up with, he went through a couple of really rough years. He had lost his dad. You know, that pain led to gaining, you know, 25 pounds, you know, wasn't going to the gym, was drinking a lot. And he hit me up a couple of years ago and was like, dude, I need some help. Like I need to get on a better track. I'm not super happy with myself and don't feel good. And like I talked to him a lot about it. We talked about, you know, habits of going to the gym and nutrition and finding a trainer, finding a plan. And dude, two years later, he is a different human being. He looks completely different. He talks completely differently. His whole life, his habits, like how he thinks about nutrition and drinking. He still goes out and has a good time, but like, dude, I am so fucking proud to see him put in the work across those years and see the actual changes that happen to his body, because I know what that's like. Like you have to commit. You have to really be consistent to get to where he got. You have to really dial things in and be committed to that plan. And it just made me so fucking proud, man. It was like a proud dad moment for one of my buddies. And like, you know, he sends me pics from the gym all the time and he's killing it, man. And it's just really cool to see that. So I don't think he was in one of those scenarios where like, oh, this GLP-1 would have been a great thing for him. But he was in a scenario where he needed to like, okay, cool. I'm not happy with, you know, what I'm putting into my body. I'm not happy with, you know, what I'm not going to the gym anymore, you know, and changed it.
Yeah. I don't think anyone would disagree with the fact that you can't do this alone. It has to be done with building the habits. Otherwise you're getting yourself in hot water, because the last place I think anyone wants to be is dependent on any pharmaceutical, like in perpetuity, to like stay where they are. Because a lot of the things that I've seen from people that I trust, like the Atias and whatever of the world, is a lot of the studies have shown that, you know, when people come off of them, they gain the weight right back pretty quickly in these like short-term studies where people aren't taking the time. Because your friend, he's built those habits now. Like he is a different person. And for him to go back to being that past version of himself would take a lot. Like there's a lot of hedge built in there, because he now knows how important it is. He also probably knows like how much work it took to get to where he is going to be and doesn't want to let that go. Whereas, you know, if you accomplish the same thing he accomplished from strictly a body composition, you know, like body fat perspective with a drug and only a drug, not building the habits, then if for whatever reason you have to stop, whether it's for financial reasons or whatever, then you are just going to go right back. There's no reason for you not to, because you haven't built the habits. So that's where I think that it's important for even people that just like, man, I've just been like hitting my head against this wall trying to figure out this issue, and this could be the spark. It has to be so alongside the things that will continue to go down that path in perpetuity. The goal should be to not need it, I guess is the way to sum it up. But again, you know, who knows? All this stuff is super early on. It's funny, a really, really good podcast I listened to recently, surprising because I thought it was going to be more like comedy, but it had some really good takeaways. Was Tom Segura was on Chris Williamson, and
Modern Wisdom.
Yeah, Modern Wisdom, and they actually talked a lot about, because if you followed Tom Segura, like he used to be big.
Yeah, he went through a personal transformation
and out of shape. Yeah, and for him, he mentions it like a wake up call was, if you've ever seen that video where he goes to dunk the basketball and
injured.
He tore his knee and his elbow like at the same time, like doing the jump. And that recovery was like a big wake up call for him of like figuring stuff out. But he had experimented with GLP-1s, Ozempic specifically, and said that he took it and just like didn't want to eat anything, didn't like the feeling, so he just stopped. But he had some interesting commentary as someone who tried it, but was, if anything, felt like this is super weird. I'm not going to do this, and did it, through lifestyle changes, diet changes, exercise changes. And now he's just a different person for the better. And it's always funny. It's always funny in like the comedy space specifically, because I've heard this before. They didn't talk about it specifically, but how, some like comedians kind of have to have like something like you can't be like an attractive, super healthy comedian and like make it or be as funny, right?
There's a couple out there now, like this guy Matt Rife came out for sure. A good looking dude. He looks like he's jacked. But what's funny about I understand what you're saying. Comedians oftentimes they had darkness, right? They had something in them that was very, very hard for them to deal with, or that, they had a vice, or there was anger, or there was deep sadness. One of the things I think is really interesting to think about, like with the whole like Joe Rogan effect of that he's had on a lot of things, but like in the comedy space, there's definitely more of a trend now that like health and fitness is becoming more of a priority for these people. Like it's not abnormal to hear about, whether or not they do yoga or go to Pilates like Tony Hinchcliffe does, or they do, martial arts or jujitsu like, Joe does and a couple of others do. And like, you have guys like Matt Rife and Ari Matty and, other comedians. Tom Segura is getting in shape. Like it's become more in vogue in that community to not be like stereotypical, lazy, fat, drunk all the time. Like, I'm sure they go out and they have fun and they party and stuff like that, but there's definitely a prioritization of your health a little bit more. You can see it,
which is cool to see, right? Because if you look in the past, and I'm not a comedy expert by any means, I know the stories that Joe shares on his podcast when he talks about comedy a lot. There's a lot of comedians back in the day that were lost pretty early because, it was a
drugs.
very, very vice heavy scene. Like it's not the healthiest scene to be a comedian that's doing, all these jobs, super late night, like you're partying, exercise isn't a thing, like all of those. So it's cool to see that turn, because Joe's also talked about the fact that he has a bunch of the Austin comedians meet him for workouts like all the time. Like it's one of the places they connect. Like they do the sauna, they work out together, and they riff about comedy while doing things that are beneficial for their health, which would never have been a thing prior to Joe, honestly.
Austin is now apparently the comedy capital of the world.
Dude, Austin is also the youngest fitness scene in the world. Let me tell you a story about that. So I went,
boy, here we go.
This past weekend, my buddy, who I actually met at the CrossFit Games, he's in Austin, trains there. He's a big High Rocks guy, and just been chatting with him about training and stuff. And like we've been intending to train together. Austin's an hour away from me, which is like close enough to where I can definitely go out there and like meet some guys to train with, but like far away enough that it's definitely not easy. It has to be kind of a production, and like, especially with the kids and like with area, it has to like the stars have to align. So finally this Saturday, I was like, hey man, like I can go up. What do you have going on? And he's like, On It, which is, we've been to the On It gym.
Yeah. Great
gym. Definitely like a social media influencer gym. Like that's very much the vibe. Like anyone that's like a fitness influencer in Austin has some clips in that gym doing something. So they were hosting a High Rocks simulation race. And he was like, you should come out, sign up. He was like, are you good to do the 11 a.m. heat? I was like, yeah, that time works. All good. So the funny thing was, I haven't been running because of this stupid nerve pain, but I'm finally like getting back into it. I can run again. So I was going to run for this, simulation race. And my friend's really good at High Rocks. And so we signed up for the elite heat, at 11, and I got last. It was very humbling, but dude, the Austin fitness scene, it was funny to be like immersed in something like that again, because it is so young. So young. I've never felt that old before, like in my life, because it's just like a room full of like half naked 20-year-olds on a Saturday morning. People. Yeah. On a Saturday morning that are like doing their fitness thing before, going about doing Austin 20-year-old things for the rest of the day. And I texted Jason as I was warming up on the bike. I was like, dude, I said exactly that. I was like, the Austin fitness scene, super young. I feel old. And I got off the bike and this girl comes up to me and she's like, sir, are you done with this bike? And I was like, sir, dude, I honestly don't think I look that old, but apparently I stuck out like a sore thumb at this scene. But yeah, man, I like the last memory I have of something like that is honestly when I was dating Bloom and I would go down to Invictus and visit her there, because it was the same thing, like San Diego fitness scene. Invictus competitors class was like, again, half naked 20-year-olds all the time. And at the time I was also, a 20-year-old. And now it's so different when you're in a different stage of life, and then to like be thrown into that world again and be like, wow, I remember this.
Your training environment has changed a whole lot too, right?
For sure.
A lot of times you're training now in your own, barn gym, and, you have Bloom all there sometimes. Yeah, all the time, right? A lot of the time, most of the time. And that also, I think, is a little bit of like a culture shock going from that type of environment into a fitness environment. You've taken some time away, and like it's changed in the past couple of years. I do a bunch of my workouts here at LA Fitness in Oceanside. They have a ton of equipment. They've got a nice sauna. It's clean. But the gym scene is alive and well, man. Like there's always people there. I remember going to the conventional gym when I was younger, and there were many times during the day that I would go there and there would be nobody there. Like one or two other people mulling around. Obviously the peak times, like before work, maybe sometimes at lunch, after work, it's really crowded. But most of the time when I hit this gym, even on off hours, man, like there's a good crowd of people there. And there's a big young bodybuilding contingent of people, both male and female there, who, I mean, it's very in right now. Like I feel like bodybuilding, going to the gym, lifting weights has permeated an even further layer of like popular culture, right? I think the CrossFit era, the fitness era that like we came up in like the early to mid 2000s, I think that opened up a lot of doors for things in the fitness industry, like popularized working out in a group environment again. Definitely brought in things like, the row machine, the air bikes, gymnastics, body, weightlifting, all those kinds of things. And then that gave also validity to other things like powerlifting. And then kind of tangentially to that, we have bodybuilding. I'm not saying CrossFit's responsible for all of this, the genesis of all of this, but it was definitely part of a resurgence of a fitness culture that has continued to grow.
Yeah,
for sure. Now you see girls walking around these commercial gyms, man, like in booty shorts and a sports bra. That was never heard of back in the day at a commercial gym. Like if you went to the commercial gym, you'd see some dudes in like the skinny tank tops and maybe like the hammer pants, right? Like some of the more bodybuilding dudes were dressing like that. But now it's like pretty commonplace to see both men and women dressing in like that kind of CrossFit, more like showing off what they've got style, right? It's very interesting. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's just interesting to observe, to see like, hey, these things have permeated even into like the commercial gym space.
Yeah. To your point, I agree.
Everybody's filming, by the way, too.
There's
filming. There's filming happening. Tripods all happening all the time. All the time.
Dude, 100, especially at a gym like On It. Like you gotta make sure you don't walk in front of people's video. But dude, so the event that they were hosting was kind of like out back. It was outside. So the gym was still open to the public. And dude, that gym was packed.
Dude, On It's got a good gym. Man. We got a good pump when we went to
Saturday
Shout
morning.
Out Primal Swolger. Primal Swolger was
He was there. He was there,
dude. Good guy.
He's always there. He lives there.
Yeah. Good
He's
guy.
always there. Yeah. Super good guy. I think he did the High Rock Sim, like one of the heats earlier, because he's doing it in Houston. Dude, also like everyone's doing High Rocks. It's fascinating to see the growth of that sport and just the popularity of it. There's like High Rocks classes
A lot of people
everywhere.
doing High Rocks, man.
Dude, it's been cool to see. But yeah, did the sim race, got my butt handed to me. These guys were super fast and I came out way too hot. But it was fun to be like back in a gym training environment, back with other people. I'm gonna try and get out there every 2 weeks on Saturdays. That's kind of my goal. Connect with those guys, some days make a day out of it, bring the whole family out. But as much as I've enjoyed like obviously the flexibility of training alone and just being able to walk over there and do it, it was such a reminder of how different it is to just be alongside other people. And especially if you're training for anything performance minded, being alongside other people that are like just fitter than you and better than you. It was cool. Funny story, last little tidbit. This was wild. One of the guys in the heat that I ran, super good runner, smaller guy, but crazy fast runner, is the drummer for Kill Tony.
Oh, Michael Gonzalez.
Yeah, he was there.
Michael Gonzalez.
Do you know him familiar or just kind of like know of him?
Yeah, Mike and I go way back, actually. No, I just know him from the show, dude.
Yeah, dude.
But he looks fit.
Legit runner. Small guy, and he was gone.
Yeah, I've been watching a little bit more of Kill Tony, the show, just in general.
So good.
It's a very, very, very good concept. It's a great concept for a show. He nailed it. In concept, this is like such an amazing thing to do, to have a panel of really really great comedians who are very, very funny. The panel is usually some sort of all-star team, right? And then you have the bucket, and then you have the regulars, right? You have regulars who come on out, and usually the regulars who are doing their minute kind of kill it. Cam Patterson, Hans Kim, Ari Matty is one of the funniest people. Ari Matty's
hilarious, dude. I still remember when his name just got pulled from the bucket, and it was his first time. It was so good. You were like, this is going to be a guy.
He is so good at being funny. It's incredible to watch. This is one of those things that fascinates me about human beings. When you see somebody who's really good at something, and you can tell that Ari Matty is naturally good at being a comedian. He's worked on it probably tirelessly, but he is so fucking good at making people laugh, and he's so natural with it. Like, it's amazing. His interactions, even with the audience, when if he's on the panel, like how he does it, he can change the whole dynamic of the show just by his 1 minute and his presence. Super, super interesting person, really funny comedian. Maybe don't listen if you're like easily offended, but he's really, really great. But then the bucket pulls, dude, the bad bucket pulls, when somebody gets up there and bombs for a minute, it's so hard to not pause the show or fast forward it or mute it or turn it off. Like, it's like watching a car crash happen in real time. It's really, really challenging.
The tension is brutal. It's funny,
dude. That 1 minute.
Tom Segura talked about it on that podcast I was listening to, because he says he gets incredibly uncomfortable by like,
it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, he's like, you're just waiting for the cow to meow, the cat to go meow, and the minute to be over. But yeah, dude, it's tough. It's tough seeing people bomb. Such a good concept. I love it.
And another one of those things that, like, the show's been going on now for 12 years, and they started with 10 or 15 people in the room, and, just kind of wired mics on a table. And now the #1 live podcast in the world, doing Madison Square Garden, doing HEB, doing like large arenas, launching the careers of multiple comedians. Like, the stakes of success or failure on that show are very, very high over the past few years. Like, if you go and you kill it in that minute, your whole trajectory as a comedian can immediately change. It's really, really interesting to see how much power that has had over people's careers and lives.
It's a good example of what you sent me on Instagram today which is, well, can't remember the exact wording, but it was like, you'd be better than most people at just anything that you do consistently for a year.
That was Alex Hormozy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So true,
I actually want to look that up because it made me think of you immediately. I probably, you're my number one person that comes up when I go to send anything to, because you are the person who I send the most stuff to. It's like fitness content, marketing content, Mets content.
That's right. Yeah. It always falls into one of those 3 buckets. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Alex Hormozy, the post was, you can beat most people at anything if you just stick with it for a year.
It's so true.
It's so true. It's so true, powerful. Man.
And it's
very, very true.
And I can speak to how easy it is to not stick to something for a year, man. Like we were kind of talking about this before we hit record, but like figuring out what you want your social media to be. Like we all know to some extent or another that like social media, for as much as it's a double-edged sword, like it's also like an incredibly powerful tool to like build an opportunity for yourself to do whatever you want, right? Like if you can garner attention there, you can sell something, you can coach, you can whatever. Like attention is going to be one of the most prized commodities in the future, and that's one way to build it. And we know that because the social media game is a big part of how we market what I do for work. But knowing all that, and even like the fact that now like we're very, very, involved in like Jason's social media and like figuring out strategy and like really putting out meaningful messaging there, obviously in collaboration with Jason. I cannot for the life of me be consistent on social media personally myself. Like I go on, and anyone that follows me can probably attest to this. Like I'll go on like a 1 week spurt of like a thing. I'm like, this is going to be the thing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it every day. And I can't like, I don't think I've ever gone past. Well,
you can, but you choose not to.
Yes. It's just, for me, it's just, God, dude, it's so,
for sure.
so tough to be consistent there. And it's so many things that, and the reason that like I want to share stuff like this is because I know that for some people listening that like, struggle with the resistance when it comes to like nutrition and fitness and stuff that like, honestly, for whatever reason, like it's just become like habitual for me. Like
those are easier for you.
I face zero resistance when it comes to counting my macros, hitting my macros, and working out every day and getting like sleep. But there are other things, many things, like not just social media, like other things. Like I am terrible about like things that are on like the to-do list for like the house, like just little things that need to get done as like a general homeowner, like check the filter of this and like do this and like, get ready for like, winterizing this. Like, dude, I will procrastinate those to the end of the world and sometimes not do them and pay the price for it later. And I know that these things are important things that I should be doing. I know that someone that is disciplined and on top of their shit would do it. And I still cannot do it. And I can do it. I choose not to. And I think it's just a very good example of like, we all deal with this. We all deal with this in different areas of our life to different extent. And I can 100% relate to just how impossible it feels to do something that for other people like is habitual and is like just not a big deal. And whatever. And the social media thing is just like, there's layers of complexity to that too, obviously, because then it's like, how much time do you want to spend on your phone to like make this successful? I also do it for work. So doing it for work and doing it outside of work, it's just a lot of time being spent in that world. But yeah, dude, it's tough, very tough.
Yeah. It can, I mean, some of this comes down to priorities. Some of it comes down to some level of it, I believe, comes down to like self-respect or like taking pride in yourself, having anchors that keep you centered, doing the things that you need to do to feel the way that you want to feel. And if you're going through like a really hard time, or maybe like your life is in a transition, like sometimes you don't have as solid anchors anymore to bring you back to the things that like maybe in other times of your life were easy for you to do. Like if let's just say like your relationship falls apart for whatever reason, not you particularly, but like just in general, your relationship falls apart. It can be hard for some people to see through the storm of that and still choose to do certain things that they know are going to make them feel better, even though they know it will make them feel better to do it. But then there's other people who get highly motivated by things like that and transform their lives. I think ultimately, you know, I can speak for myself here. Like, it comes down to me at some point going, okay, this is going to keep repeating itself. This lesson is going to keep presenting and repeating itself until I learn it. And if I learn it, can I change my behaviors or change my thought process about it enough to feel really good about it? Or can I just accept the fact that maybe this isn't hugely important to me and I don't want it to be something that weighs me down? So I'm going to kind of let it go. I think both of those things can be valid for people, but like, I in fitness and nutrition and social media and all these different realms, it can be anything really. You will meet resistance at times. And, you know, if you're somebody who you think these things are super important to you, you want to build a social media following, or you're trying to build a business, or like, hey, you're not happy with how you look or how you feel. And you know that going to the gym 4 times a week, or you know that, you know, creating some sort of plan around your nutrition is the way to go. And you find yourself not making the decisions that are in line with that. At some point, you have to kind of take a moment of self-reflection and try to understand what's going on in those moments and look at it and say, hey, when I'm at this decision point, am I meeting the resistance head on and saying, I understand I'm feeling pulled in the direction to, you know, eat in a way that like, I'm not going to feel good tomorrow. I'm pulled in the direction of laying on the couch as opposed to going to the gym. I'm pulled in the direction of like, you know, shutting my computer down, closing my phone down, not doing the thing that I said I was going to do on social media, because I don't feel like doing that. Comfort right now is more important. And it's more complex than that, but it can sometimes be just that simple, like meeting the resistance at the moment that you need to meet it and being aware of the decision that you're going to make. Awareness is the first key to this. If you're aware in that moment that you have this choice, that you can go this way or this way, the awareness, you have to have that. And then try more often than not to take the path that you know is going to make you feel good long-term, not short-term, not just give you the comfort, not just give you, you know, the insulin spike, not just give you the short-term, you know, bliss of like, whether it's porn or YouTube or whatever, like whatever those things are. Like if you don't feel good the next day or the next minute or the next hour or whatever, after you've done consuming those things, like to make real change at the moment that you have the choice about whether or not you're going to do that thing or you're going to do the other thing, you have to be aware of it. And then you have to choose the other thing more often than not. You know, I think about this kind of stuff a lot because, you know, I've gone through over the past couple of years, some challenging situations that have like really tested my mettle when it comes to some of this stuff. And I understand so much more deeply. Like, you know, I used to have much more of like who cares about your problems kind of mentality about things, right? Like, but I do think that like it can become so hard to make the right decisions. And like, sometimes you don't see things super clearly, and having the awareness that like you're in a state like that and you need to like kind of back out of it and figure it out is super, super essential. It's not just as easy as telling somebody like, oh, change your fucking life, go to the gym, post on social media more, eat more healthfully. I think that that's a really base way of understanding it. Like, yes, that is the solution a lot of times. Just do the thing you know you need to do. But meeting the resistance head on and being aware of it, being aware that this is exerting this like massive influence on your life is huge.
Yeah, it's so complicated, man. It's
a very complicated subject.
So tough to like figure out also like what thing is truly an issue versus like the things that are like, hey, you're not going to bat 1,000 every time. And like, these are minor in the grand scheme of things, as long as you have the basics in place. Because I think that goal line also shifts and should shift with time, because you should take care of one thing, or at least this is how I look at it. Like, take care of one thing. It won't happen overnight, but you should be able to get to a point where like, okay, this is now habitual. This isn't a source of extreme resistance anymore. You can kind of put it in maintenance mode and then find the next thing that maybe in the prior year, that wasn't as big a deal because you had bigger fish to fry, or just in the season of your life, it wasn't a big deal, but now you have to move on and now try and like address this thing that is now the top priority. And I think that that's how you continue to grow and never take steps back. But again, in the moment, it could be very tough to be like truly, truly honest with yourself about like, this is something that I should address now versus like, hey, I'm doing a really good job in these other areas. These obviously take some energy to keep them going. So let me focus on these because these are higher impact things, nutrition, fitness, sleep, whatever. And then let me let this thing just kind of be in a not ideal state for now until I feel better here. And then I think it's tough to also be honest with yourself about like when it is time to move on and like tackle the next dragon,
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. So let's say you're saying that this, like doing your daily to-dos around the house, or like the planned to-dos that you need to get done is something that like you put off a little bit. Let's say hypothetically it was really impacting your relationship with Ariel. Like, let's say Ariel was like, yo, Gabe, like you said you were going to do this. Like you said you were going to change the air filters, or you said you were going to, clean up X, Y, or Z. And, it's really starting to bother me that you don't do those things. Like you say you're going to do them, but you don't end up doing them. Would that change the way that you looked at those things significantly?
100%. And I think
right?
that isn't
that interesting?
But I think that this is another thing that it's in one of Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. And he actually talks about it with the example of, for most people, I forget how he words it. Something to the tune of like, most people treat their pets like, love yourself like how you love your pet. Is something essentially equating to the fact that like, if your pet had some issue and they had to then take a medicine and clean up their diet, you would, there we go. We care more for pets than we do for ourselves. You would absolutely drop up a dime, like get on a regimen and fix up their diet, get them on more walks and give them their medication. Like you would do that 100%. But for some reason, we don't do it for ourselves. And that to me is a good kind of like example of what you just asked, because if it was something that was bothering Ariel, I would 100% take care of it, because I don't want her to think that I'm falling short on her expectation of me as a husband. So it will absolutely get taken care of and it would never be an issue. The place where I have issues is the things when no one's watching. Yep. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's literally just the thing that like, if I don't get done, the only person that's going to know, care, or like impact in the short term, because in the long term, with a lot of the things that I think I could do such a better job, is like we end up having to pay a lot more for a thing that I should have serviced earlier, that should have just gotten taken care of. And then like I'm kicking myself in the butt, but like no one else knew that that's something that I've been thinking about for months to get done, aside from myself. Like it's only me that can hold myself accountable. And that's what makes it so tough, because it's so easy for when it's just me to just be like, I'll take care of it tomorrow, take care of it next week, take care of it next week. But it would be completely different if it was something like Ariel's like, hey, this is really important to me. Can you take care of it? Like done. Easy.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of power in the last couple of minutes of
the stuff when no one's looking is,
bro.
That's where it is.
That's a scary place to be. That's a scary place to be, man. And if you don't have accountability to yourself, or if you don't have accountability to somebody else, or you don't create accountability to somebody or something in your life, those decisions can go very haywire very fast. Like if you're solely relying on like just your impulses or your emotions of being the governor of what you're going to do or not do, that's a that can be a really scary place to operate. You know, I went to high school, all guys high school on Long Island, and it was called Chaminade High School. And there was this concept of being the Chaminade man. And every year they nominate a senior in the class to win this award. But basically what it comes down to is the credo of the Chaminade man is the Chaminade man does the right thing at the right time, no matter who is looking, because it is the right thing to do. And like, it's one of these things, I might have misplaced some of the words there, but that's the main essence of it. But it's one of these things that, like, when you're in high school, I don't think you fully understand the depth and the repercussion of that type of statement. But like this conversation that we're just having right now, like that's everything. It's doing the right thing for the right reasons, no matter who is watching. And that's ultimately like what your standard ends up being. The standard that you hold when nobody's around, or the standard that you hold when like there's no consequences, is like the bare bones standard that you have. It's really interesting. One thing that's helped me tremendously in this, you know, I said I've gone through a couple of tough years, but one thing that's helped me tremendously is creating that accountability, not only directly to myself, but directly to somebody in my life who I really, really, really care about, and who I really care what would they think of me if they knew, not even talking about like really like bad shit, but like if they knew that this was bothering me, that like I wasn't doing this thing in a proud way. I'm putting something off that I should do just because I don't feel like doing it. And that person, they would be like, it's not worth the mental anguish, dude. If you're going to like beat yourself up about not doing this thing, just do the thing, check it off your list, and feel good about yourself afterwards. You know what I mean? Like, so that kind of double layer of accountability has been really helpful. Yes, I want to do it for myself, to take pride in the way that I'm living my life and be proud of the standard that I'm setting, but also having that like double check on it has been super powerful.
And that kind of like speaks to the power of like writing goals down, and also like having very concrete goals, like very measurable goals, because a lot of people will stray away from that stuff, because that, even in of itself, even if you don't share it with anyone, like when it's on paper, or when it's like very clear that this is what you want to get done, and there's going to be a fail pass on whether it's done or not, that stuff in itself is scary, because you're setting yourself up for, I didn't accomplish the thing. And that could be the first step for many people, because we all kind of like in our minds have these like goals and aspirations that we have, but they're like super abstract and they're only in our mind. And if that's the case, it's so easy to be like, well, you know, this year was a little tough, a little busy, like I'll just do it next year. It's very different when it's somewhere on paper, or it's just very clear and not this like abstract, like I want to do better in my career, or I want to look a little bit better. Like, no, like I want to see a number in a scale. I want a % body fat. I want to make X amount of income this year. I want to grow my social media following by X things, by X followers. And then you can always reverse engineer those to, okay, what are the steps I need to do to get there? And most people won't do this, because then that in itself holds you accountable. Like now you've done the work to know, like, these are the steps I need to take for this very concrete goal that I want to accomplish. And you can then measure yourself if you're doing it or you're not doing it. And you're only to blame if it's not getting done. But that in itself is a really tough thing to do, because again, then you can't really shimmy your way out of it. You've kind of made the commitment. So anyway, man, that got good. I got deep at the end.
Yeah, dude. I like it. I don't even remember where we started. We started off with foot risers.
I think we started off with Jason being shorter than we both thought he was. Oh man, the big guy. Well, hopefully next week we'll have the entire home team back in action. Dennis a little bit under the weather. He got hit hard by, I think, the flu. He's still not feeling great.
Dennis got the Long Island bird flu. He's patient zero. He's been down and out for 2 weeks.
We'll give him a hard time when he comes back. And Jason where in the world is Jason? Who knows? Who knows, man? The big guy doing big guy things.
Carmen Jason Ego, man. He's all over the place, bro.
The big guy doing big guy things. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys for listening. As Jason always says, if you guys enjoyed the podcast, any of the episodes, home team episodes, the guests, just me and Jason, we're really, really doubling down on the podcast this year. Want to bring you guys some great conversations. We also didn't get to the workout challenge of the week because we only had half the home team. So we're bumping that for next week. 2K row, 1 minute rest, max bench press at body weight. I'm really glad when I messaged Jason, he hadn't done it yet because I really didn't want to do it today. I always do it right before recording. So I was like, all right, I'm putting that off for next week. But guys, please subscribe, leave us a comment, leave us a rating for the podcast. It goes a long, long way. But thank you guys for listening. MDV, any parting thoughts?
No, I love this conversation, man. And I think if anybody's out there who's looking for that kind of accountability, we're building a community of really strong, like-minded men at Train Hard. And even if even if you were maybe you did fitness in the past, or you're kind of not sure about where you want to go for fitness, if you're looking for that kind of motivation, that kind of inspiration, that kind of like brotherhood, camaraderie, accountability, there's a platform for it. It's called Train Hard. It's something that we do here with Jason, Gabe, mostly at the lead with that thing, but it's going to be really powerful. It is really powerful already. So I would advise you to check it out.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, look forward to a whole bunch of stuff coming down the pipeline here pretty soon. Thank you guys and keep training hard.